Calling the roll, Mr. Strawn.
Here.
Mr. Tuma.
Here.
Mr. Hauser.
Here.
Ms. Baker. Ms. Baker is absent at the moment. Ms. Simon. Here. We have a quorum. Also like the record to reflect that Councilman Miller is also in attendance.
Thank you for Mr. Miller being here. Is there any public comment relating to the matters before us?
No, no one has signed in.
Okay. And we have one item prior to the agenda, the approval of the minutes from the March 26th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
Been second. Council Lucero second. Any discussion? Hearing no discussion. All in favor, say aye. 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 Any opposed? Hearing none. We have one item that's come before the committee, and to start out by making an announcement that we have 60 days by law to move this process on through. We received this on June 1st, so we have till, I think our July meeting is on the 24th, Khalil? Is that? Yeah, on the 24th. It's the latest possible date, so we have time. It was not my intention to move this, vote this out today. It was an intent for everybody to have a chance to listen, learn, then be potentially ask questions, because it's got some new philosophies embedded in this plan, and then come back in 2 weeks for fresh questions if anybody has any, and then vote it out at that point in time, should there not be any significant changes. And seeing, I see Mr. Carter there at the podium, prepared to speak on this. So if you can cover the plan, the changes from last time to this time, and then your other comments as far as questions and things like that.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, did you want me to read it into the record?
Oh, please, yeah, I'm sorry, I apologize.
Resolution number 2018-0129, adopting the 2018 Economic Development Plan in accordance with Section 7.05 of the Cuyahoga County Charter and Section 801.01 of the Cuyahoga County Code.
Thank you. And this has already gone through the Economic Development Commission before coming here, as I understand. Thank you.
There you go.
Please.
Okay. All right. Good afternoon, ED Committee council members. My name is Ted Carter. I'm the Chief Economic Development Business Officer for Cuyahoga County. On behalf of Executive Armin Budish and the Cuyahoga County Economic Development Commission, I am pleased to present the updated Cuyahoga County Economic Development Plan for 2018. This annual update was developed in consultation with the Economic Development Commission members listed in the plan. And let me just, for the sake of the record, acknowledge who those members are. The Executive Budish is the chairman of the Economic Development Commission. Mayor Frank Jackson, Councilmember Jack Strawn, who serves as the vice chair. Harriet Applegate, Executive Secretary of North Shore Federation of Labor, AFL-CIO. William Friedman, President and CEO of the Cleveland Port Authority. Brian Hall, the Executive Director, Commission on Economic Inclusion at the Greater Cleveland Partnership. Joe Roman, President and CEO of Greater Cleveland Partnership. Mayor Michael Summers, City of Lakewood, who represents the Mayors and Managers Association. Mark Burns is the private sector representative, who is chairman of the Oswald Companies. And Paul Hurdick and I serve as staff to the commission. I want to in particular thank Mr. Strawn for his invaluable input into this plan, as well as the other members of the commission. This plan represents an update for the 2018 that are related to sharpening the focus on our primary goal, Cuyahoga County's economic growth. We are refining our strategies in the light of our experience, learnings, and changing circumstances. One important change since a year ago, not in the plan, but in the overall environment, is the continued decline in unemployment and a significantly tighter labor market. A changing market environment mandates that we be flexible in our approach. Thus, we see the wisdom of the framers of our county charter by which this plan is mandated when they called for annual updates to our economic development plan. The plan represents 3 objectives, 8 strategies, and 32 activities. The most important element of this plan is that it represents a collaborative framework for the county's economic development ecosystem and our more than 20 partners, both internal and external to the county, with the county leading, coordinating, and facilitating many of these efforts. 4 broad themes emerge in our 2018 plan update. Last year, I went through each change. I'm going to shift that slightly for this year and just kind of talk about the broad changes at a high level, and then we can talk about specifics if there are questions. The first theme in shifting the plan is to focus on workforce innovation. As I've testified before, we have realigned our office so that workforce innovation, led by David Feinerman, is really the core of our office and is supported by our two other vertical functions, economic development and community development and housing. Economic development is led by Administrator Michael May. Community development and housing is led by Deputy Director Ken Surratt. Over the past 3 years, Executive Budish has led a challenging but important effort to refocus our regional workforce system on meeting the needs of our private enterprises for a steady and sufficient supply of talent to support growth. Traditional workforce programming, while important and necessary, has not been agile enough to meet these talent needs. Executive Budish led the creation of a funders group chaired by Deborah Vesey, CEO of the Deaconess Foundation, and represented by some of the biggest funders of philanthropy in our community. This group has identified the importance of partnerships with industry sector intermediaries. We will soon bring forward and request council support for a new and promising initiative focused on overcoming the barriers to full talent supply in three key sectors critical to the growth of our regional economy: manufacturing, healthcare, and information technology. We will continue to expand county workforce initiatives, including refocused summer internships, a training partnership with Cuyahoga Community College, and our new innovative and successful Skill-Up service. At a modest cost and staff time, the Skill-Up service has provided talent development expertise to dozens of businesses across 15 industry sectors, showing these businesses the bottom line benefit of advancing the skills of their existing workforce through on-the-job training, a missing piece in the puzzle of fitting skills alignment to skills needed for business growth. We are preparing legislation that will strongly encourage businesses receiving county financial assistance to draw talent from well-structured and certified apprenticeship programs. We are also working with Ohio Means Jobs to align our Skill-Up platform and integrate it with the Ohio Means Jobs platform. Education is a key part of workforce preparation and is reflected as an emphasis in our plan. County government has taken a leading role in supporting evidence-based educational interventions. Our Universal Pre-Kindergarten Initiative has shown remarkable results, with 81.6% of students who participated in high-quality pre-K programs for at least 6 months achieving kindergarten readiness. The second theme reflected in the plan is entrepreneurship and business innovation. Our region has some extraordinary innovation assets, which must be aligned in order to drive future economic growth. From the NASA Glenn Research Center to Case Western Reserve's work with augmented reality as part of Microsoft's HoloLens project and the ThinkBox Innovation Laboratory, to established industry sector intermediaries like BioEnterprise and Magnet, to early stage startup supporters like Jumpstart, and now the first United States plug-and-play startup accelerator outside of Silicon Valley, housed in our very own Global Center for Health Innovations, and that is Plug and Play's healthcare vertical, which is calls Cleveland home. Our challenge is to leverage this extraordinary wealth of innovation to keep the resulting businesses and job growth here in our region. We have the advantage of a reasonable cost of living and an emerging entrepreneurial culture and ecosystem. We must better organize this system and connect seed capital to it. We must also add to this assurance a supply of talent and other needed inputs for growth. As one example that reflects several initiatives in our plan, we met last week with a plug-and-play CEO in the health IT space. The plug-and-play cohort is here for about 6 to 7 weeks, going through their business plans, seeking capital, and then this particular CEO has explored our marketplace. He is very interested in relocating his company from Toronto, Canada, to Cleveland. We engaged him through our partnership with Plug and Play to understand how to meet his needs for suitable manufacturing space, both affordable and expandable, and to locate in a place in the county where his staff can get to work. We are engaged with multiple institutions and municipal partners to encourage and sustain this desired growth of innovative startups. One example is the county's modest investment and support for the Aerozone Alliance, which is a collaboration of 7 communities adjacent to Hopkins Airport, anchored by NASA Glenn, which promotes aerospace-related development around Cleveland Hopkins Airport, and also is supported by the Ohio Aerospace Institute, which has leveraged our funding for a larger federal grant to support NASA technology transfer for the Midwest. That is located and headquartered here in Cleveland. In this work, we are consciously encouraging companies supporting NASA Glenn and the aerospace industry to locate in this area, to access the workforce and tech collaboration needed to grow and expand in the county. The Aerozone Alliance is close to making its first announcement about a company associated with drone technology locating in its business incubator. The third theme is opportunity, equity, and inclusion. Executive Budish has emphasized since the beginning of his first term that equity and inclusion must inform the work of all county departments. In the economic development arena, we understand that business growth alone, while important, is not enough to bring disadvantaged persons and residents of underserved communities out of poverty. Over the past year, more than 1,000 leaders of our region's economic development and social services agencies have each committed 2 days of their time to learn about and better understand the legacy of systematic racial discrimination. Informed by this shared learning and the impact that this has had on minority communities fully participating in our economy, we're adding connecting underserved communities to economic opportunities as an explicit focus and primary objective of our plan. At a tactical level, we partnered with Louis Cartagena, internal to the county, the diversity officer and the procurement officer, to lead initiative which the council approved around GCP's Minority Business Collaborative, and we are also in discussions with the President's Council to determine how we can work with the Opportunity Zone program, which is a new federal program to impact these communities in a positive fashion. Another way this objective can be expressed is through a focus on understanding and overcoming barriers to full economic participation. These barriers are partly physical, a lack of affordable housing located near jobs, and a shortage of reliable and affordable transportation from home to daycare to work. The barriers are also structural, a shortage of affordable, reliable child care options, and lack of supports for newly employed public assistance recipients to maintain their employment and advance in their careers. One of the ways that we have evolved in the department is to have a closer working relationship and connectivity with the HHS department. This connection is strongest at the moment with JFS as part of our workforce efforts, but we are continuing to seek ways to create greater alignment and impact. We are engaged with the Fund for Our Economic Future in a new initiative to better understand job access challenges that have been illustrated in their recent report, Two Tomorrows. We have added mobility as a result of this report as a new focus element to our plan. We will work with the fund to develop innovative solutions using the latest technology and business models. Our participation in the recent important National Meeting of the Minds dialogue, which was held here in Cleveland, is part of this engagement. Mobility and the concept of distance discrimination was a key component of that forum, and that was a national forum that was housed here recently in Cleveland. It is too early to set a cost on this effort, but I anticipate some county resources will be needed and requested as early as the mid-year budget request. Another way we can advance equity and inclusion is by engaging our economic development capital partners to consciously understand and work to improve the impact of their work on underserved persons. We now engage with this group quarterly to identify ways we can better coordinate and leverage our collective resources and work and develop what we are calling a continuum of capital that the county provides for small, women, and minority-owned businesses and entrepreneurs. For this reason, we have asked each of our funded partners and each private business receiving a loan with job creation covenants to report annually on the characteristics of the business owners and newly hired employees. We set no quotas, but we use the information reported to understand how our investment in limited county funds can best be used to achieve our goals of equity and inclusion going forward. These quarterly meetings are very positive, and we've gotten a warm reception from our 7 capital partners around this issue, and they have reported without hesitation on their results. Our fourth theme is the importance of place-based development, not only in the urban core, but also in our suburbs. We were fortunate in 2017 to leverage modest county infrastructure funding to win new Amazon distribution centers at not 1, but 2 underused former shopping malls in Warrensville Heights and in Euclid. Not only will these new distribution centers create 3,000 new jobs directly, they will also have a multiplier effect, supporting local businesses and increasing employment down the line. We have participated with our first suburbs consortium in efforts to analyze the best next use for other former malls, which may range from industrial development to parkland or other suitable uses. We have actively promoted available development sites in multiple suburbs through national engagement with site selectors. We will continue to focus resources, including economic development loans, on place-based developments that promise both strategic neighborhood strength and also new job growth. We have convened over 30 of the county's 59 municipalities for quarterly discussions, including technical training on how to calibrate incentives so growing businesses receive the appropriate level of public support. Some examples of the county's focus on place-based development includes the Community Development Supplemental Grant Program and recent economic development loans to projects like Church and State, Variety Theater, and Link 59. To test and measure the results of our strategic work, we have created a new Office of Strategic Planning, Research, and Analytics that is responsible for working with the Deputy Director to track and measure the performance of our office and monitor job creation and engage in strategic research and analysis. Paul Hurdick now leads that office and has led development of several new tools that will enable our office to be more business-friendly and effective, including a customer relationship management system and the development and process of a county site inventory system linked to and supplementing existing site promotion systems. We have developed a set of measures linked to the objectives and metrics of the 5-year plan. You have before you a chart showing these measures and their baseline values. The 5-year plan lays out the work before us, not only on county government, but for our partners in the broader regional economic development ecosystem. We look forward to briefing the Economic Development Commission and this committee and the council on our progress. 2 other things I'd like to mention is that while we've done all this in advance, I'd say as we measure the 32 activities that are reflected in the plan, in my judgment, we've made progress on about half of those. Remember, this is a plan that resets every 5 years. I'm going to ask Mr. Hurdick just to come up and walk you through the measures as he developed those so you can see how we are tracking our performance and the performance of the county. But in addition, while we've done this work, we've also made significant progress on the condition of our loan portfolio. And I've asked the chairman to set up a separate committee meeting so that we can go through that comprehensively and without kind of one-off questions, and just take you through the last report, which was on 11/30 of 2017, and kind of take you through very methodically the work that's been done. But as we stand here today, can definitively tell you the number of loans in our portfolio, the condition of that. We are fully staffed in this area now, and so you saw in December the interim report card given by the Inspector General, which said that we were making progress but still have work to do, and he'll come up with another report here shortly, measuring our progress. Lastly, what this was unexpected as it relates to this plan, we received a proposal, and this is really the intent of it, from the Lakewood Economic Development Team for a new project that they are developing, and they cross-tabbed the value of that project to this plan. And so very well done, obviously part of salesmanship to encourage our support, but the fact that they took the time, read it, and could apply it to work that they're doing, this is the objective of our office, is really to be a center of excellence and innovation and a consultant to our 59 communities. So this is not right for consideration by this committee, but they did want us, now that the plan looks like the project is going to move forward, to get us in early, which is a good thing for us to kind of help shape and provide some input, and to also kind of infuse further some of the elements of this plan that are important to the county, to this body, and to the executive. So very good meeting. That just happened on Thursday. So that's just an aside and an anecdote, but a tangible anecdote. So with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll stop. Call Mr. Hurdick up just to walk you quickly through the measures, and then we'll take questions, unless there's some now.
So, page we're going to go through before the questions is
yeah. We have the other one, Ted, for handing out if you wish. No, we'll just. The one other thing I should mention about the plan that probably the most significant change, and sometimes because we've done so much work, but this is part of our loan portfolio improvement process. On page 18 reflects, if you recall in the previous plan, we had 15 or 16 different economic development programs. We have now realigned and put those into 6 different buckets, and so this is more streamlined. Many of these programs through different projects that you have already approved, but we thought that this was a more effective way of communicating to the marketplace how they can work with us and where to expect assistance and the philosophy behind that assistance. So that's on page 18. and that was one of the recommendations of the Ernst & Young consulting report a year ago. Paul, you want to come up and just walk quickly through that, and then we can take questions. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Councilman Shaw and members of the committee. I'm Paul Herdig, work in the Department of Development. As Ted said, working on strategic planning and business analytics. The page I'm going to talk about looks like this. It was distributed electronically on Friday. I have a few extra paper copies if needed, but this is a one-page sheet showing metrics of the 5-year economic development plan. Okay. So I first want to thank and acknowledge there's a lot of talent here within the county in terms of research and analytics. I want to acknowledge actually the county's Innovation and Performance Office, which assisted us in a couple of these measures. I also want to acknowledge we have a couple of really good people working in the Department of Development with me, a young man named Jonathan Cox, who's a public policy fellow who actually holds an economics degree, who's been very helpful in putting some of this together. We do subscribe to a couple of proprietary data services that also help us get the numbers together. And I'm happy to go into as much detail as people want on this today. I want to kind of keep it high level. The first thing to note is that when you talk about measuring economic conditions, there's always a lot of things you can look at. So we started by looking at the set of metrics that we have in our 5-year plan, and they've been in the plan for a little while. They're near the beginning, indicating at very high level what we would like to measure, what do we want to see how it's doing. So if you read down your first column, these are the actual wording from our plan about what we're trying to get a handle on. Things like the investment from outside Cuyahoga County, then our exports out of Cuyahoga County, both to national and international markets, new business starts, goods and services value, positive national media mentions. So these are all like at what you call the macroeconomic category. So we then kind of searched for available data to see what can we measure that helps us see this. In terms of the investment from outside the county, there's not much available publicly, but thanks to our friends at Team Neo, they subscribe to this proprietary service called PitchBook, which actually attempts to capture a lot of deals which may not be publicly reported. So using their data, that's where we were able to find that the latest value we can find, most of our investment from outside the county comes from the U.S. Some does come from foreign sources. The total amount was about $23 billion in the year 2017. In terms of exports coming from the county going outward, currently we're only looking at the international exports, to actually out of the country, and that alone is at $5.7 billion. We are actively looking for the right data source because what we send from the county to other parts of the United States is a lot more than that. So the final number is going to be a lot more, but this just gives a sense of the sense of our international exporting business as it stands. In terms of new business starts, we were able to get some analysis that came from the Ohio Development Services Agency, and the latest year they had was 2016. They found about 1906. We will be able to find other data. We'll have to dig a little harder. Some of it's not strictly public, but we have relationships with folks over at Cleveland State where we can dig a little deeper to find this information. Goods and services, that's a very traditional measurement called gross domestic product. You just do it at the county level. We get that from our subscription service we subscribe to called Chmura Analytics. And because there's a little work involved, they had 2016, so we're producing about $94 billion worth of goods and services here in Cuyahoga County. Media mentions, kind of an interesting measurement. You can count, a lot of it's what we call qualitative, but you can count them. Our friends at Destination Cleveland actively monitor the national media, and they told us we had over 228 last year, but they did caution us they really actually look more at those related to tourism. So we'll be looking for additional sources as well because we think we're actually doing better than that when it comes to the business media and other ways in which the county is mentioned in terms of business environment. In terms of employment, we get that from the federal source, and I just want to note that the number we presented of 626, 656, that is for private companies. If you were actually to add in government employment, we'd actually be above that, but that's the figure for private company employment in the year 2016. So again, that first chunk of statistics has to do with how the economy is performing as a business economy. Then sort of the next set of statistics has to do with how our folks are doing, how our population is doing. So we look at things now in terms of, well, what is our population? What's our unemployment rate? Then what educational attainment do the folks have that live in Cuyahoga County? And then we start looking, down into the neighborhood area. But just in terms of those big three there, we talked about the unemployment rate last year was 5.9%, and that, again, measures those who are actively looking for work but can't find it. Our population estimate, you can see that's an estimate from the Census Bureau. It'll be made official at the 2020 census, but that's the best 2017 estimate. And then in terms of educational attainment, if you look at the different tiers, basically about 49% of our residents are either high school, or if they went to college, they didn't get any degree. So that's that 49%. We've got about 8.3% of our residents that have only a two-year degree, an associate's degree essentially, and we've got about 33% of our population that has a bachelor's or above, bachelor's, master's, doctorate, professional, anything there and up. Then in terms of the next whole set of measures really has to do with how are our neighborhoods doing, how are our communities doing. So we looked for there's different ways to count income. You hear about per capita income, per person income. We looked at median family income because that gives you some sense of how people are doing. What does their family have to live on? So using our proprietary search, Tamora, we looked at the 2016 level, which is about 45,289, and we can actually get that at the city level, which we use to kind of see how the cities are doing. Didn't want to put it all here, it would be a lengthy list. We can also do the same thing in terms of housing values. We get the median home values off of Chamorro, that's the 122, and we get that by city. We actually have, and very shortly we'll have publicly a much better source when the 2018 reappraisal is released, which I'm told is going to be in July. We'll have excellent data because that's done by our own appraisers on what the latest values are in every part of Cuyahoga County. The next thing is an opportunity index. There are actually a number of different organizations that put out opportunity indexes. We chose one that's been established for a while by a national coalition of fairly well-known organizations, both labor sector and business sector. They combine a number of different measures of how folks are doing. It is not where we'd want it to be, but it gives us some indication of what needs to improve in terms of opportunities for our residents. As Director Carter mentioned earlier, we see room for improvement there. So we're not happy to be at C-. We'd like to improve. Some of the data that underlies that has to do with jobs, employment, then education, public health. We are fortunate to have some in-house data. As I mentioned, our Innovation Performance Unit collects the data on how our pre-K program is doing. It's doing a pretty good job preparing the students for kindergarten, those that are enrolled in it. As you can see, they measured about 81.6%. Those are the children that were in it for 6 months, then went on to kindergarten. In terms of public health, a couple things. We look at our infant mortality. We collect that data because we're very concerned about that. We're at 8.7 per thousand births. As I'm sure you've heard from others, we're working to make that better. The opioid deaths, I know others have talked to you about. That's a measure of how things are going there. So we have that statistic because we count that quite aggressively. And the final thing that we added this year, again, to measure a sense of how well people are doing, is something we call labor force participation. This is a little bit different than the unemployment rate. The unemployment rate only measures people that are actively looking for work and can't find it. This measure is saying of all the folks that are working age, everyone in the county, how many of those folks are actually in the labor force, either working or looking for work. We're at about 63.2%. That's a number that if we're able to get people better connected to job opportunities, you would expect that number to increase. So the goal for that would be to see a higher number after applying some interventions. All right, so this is as we kind of say, the baseline values, the starting values of these indicators. And we will continue to use this both in our work with the Commission quarterly and also in keeping council updated as we see if the work we're doing under the plan has a positive impact on these indicators of our economic health. All right.
See how you're, we'll just keep you right there.
Sure.
Because you got hard data and numbers. Questions in regards to any of the data or any of the information that was just put out by Paul? Yes, Ms. Simon?
Thank you. The metrics are great. In terms of the employment number, number of persons employed in the private sector, do we have a metric for 2000, the preceding years and how that's trending? Number one, I think we do.
Yes, we do. And actually, for just about all of these, we can do historical. So I'll make a special note of that one.
Okay, so when we come back. And then I also wanted to drill down on the people employed, or if that's trending up, do the people actually live or move to Cuyahoga County? I don't even know if there's any way to start measuring that. I'm concerned about Amazon jobs, for example, in Euclid, that people might not necessarily move into the county to take those jobs. So I at some point want to start measuring that.
Yes, we can. Migration information, both where people move to, move from, and also the pattern of commuting is also available. So I'll make a note that that's of interest as well.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. On the high school 2-year, 4-year plus, is that percentage 49.1 high school graduates, and then 8.3 of that 49 is a 2-year, and 33.4 of that 49? Is that how that works?
Yes.
So are we saying 51% of those in Cuyahoga County do not have a high school diploma?
Oh, thank you for the question. I understand. These are cumulative. So no, the number of those that haven't achieved high school diploma is much smaller than that. If you were to take 100 and take all these numbers away, what you're left with would be those without the high school diploma.
Okay.
So that's a much smaller number.
So you're stacking all three of those together to get to your high school graduation. Is that what you're saying?
If you visualize starting at nothing, you get to high school and you go up from there.
Right.
All these numbers are above high school. So
Right, they're all
those
stacked.
left below are all only what's left.
Okay. If I may, the average neighborhood earnings, is that 45 to two-income household, two-income wage? So on the average, is there like a 22,000 per person, or is that one household? What is that based on?
It's a great question. The answer is, it's actually based on the Census Bureau survey asking people what's the income in your household, whether there be one person working full-time and someone working part-time, whether there be 3 people working part-time. So this measures the actual amount coming into that household. There's certainly statistics on, household composition. Is it single parent? Are there 2 earners? Is there someone with a side job? But that's sort of a different analysis.
I would think it would be important to know if that is a one income, because if you're talking about 2 income or 3 part-time, all that I think makes it a different take on where our families are in supporting themselves with a $45,000 income.
Yes.
Just one more, the universal pre-K for 81.6. Is there a reason why we don't focus on what we're doing with those that are in middle school or high school and the programs we have in place for them and how that has an impact on the viability of Cuyahoga County?
Right. On this issue, Councilwoman, I want to defer to other portions of the administration. There is focus on education at all levels, not simply at this level. So what my short answer would be, this is a number that's readily available because we've been so intensively involved in actually operating the pre-K program. It's not to say that the county isn't also very involved in other levels of education.
Okay, because the pre-K, taking them all the way to the workforce is a pretty big gap.
Yes.
I just
Yes.
wondered if you took it in steps to see the progression of those children as they age and what happens with new programs that enhance perhaps the pre-K all the way to graduation and then employment.
So and certainly the note I'm taking with that is an interest in seeing what happens beyond that stage.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you. Just hitchhiking off what Councilwoman Baker was talking about with respect to the median family income by city. So not knowing whether or not that 45,000 plus is single family or double income coming into the home, regardless, it's not a lot of money. So what is the county doing in terms of not only trying to find, gainful employment for people, but quality employment, whereby which they're going to have opportunities for advancement in a particular job, even?
Yes. Again, Councilman, I would defer. I don't want to say I'm just the research guy, but there's others here in the room. David Feinerman, Director Carter, have been actively involved in the workforce innovation conversation. The whole range of programs that are there. So as Director Carter stated, this is the first order of business for the Department of Development. So there's serious and strenuous efforts specifically to engaging folks in work and advancing them in work.
Okay, appreciate it.
Yes, Chairman, to Mr. Hurdick, first I appreciate the role you're playing. I think it's good to do some big picture thinking like this. Person by the name of John Penny created a stir a week and a half or so ago with a presentation at the Cleveland City Club entitled "Dead Last," and he was quoting some statistics saying that we're near the bottom of every metropolitan area on certain economic indicators, and at the same time, I've seen some other data saying that we're near the top on some things like small high-tech startups, and that we've made big progress, and so I'm wondering if you've been able to sort out all this data and distill it into an overall sense of how we're doing. To what extent are Mr. Penny's concerns valid or not valid, and how are we doing? Where are we trending? And what do we need to do better?
And again, Councilman, I would to some extent defer that to Director Carter when it comes back to the podium. But I will say that not long ago in the State of the County speech, Executive Budish presented some numbers which were quite impressive in terms of how the county is doing. Those were all solid numbers based on data as well.
Does that answer your question, or it didn't answer your John Penny question? I assume you're going to ask that again in a few minutes when Mr. Carter gets up.
Okay, well, I'll defer it and let the director expound upon it.
You know what question you're going to get when you come up there. So, any other?
I have one real quick, Chair.
Sure.
In reviewing the employment number of 5.9, back in 2009 it was almost at 9%. So that 3% drop in unemployment, I would think, would make a huge impact on where we are today. So what would you say about that as far as our students graduating, higher education, more jobs here, better wages, perhaps maybe even more of a one-income household for those perhaps that can stay at home? How does a 3% drop in unemployment over the last 8 or 9 years affect the overall picture?
Sure. Well, thank you, Councilwoman. Certainly, the entire nation has seen improvement since the recession receded, and we're now in a recovery. The economy in our region, in some ways mirrors the national economy, in other ways doesn't, because we have industry sectors here which have specific needs for talent. One note, as I think Ted indicated in his opening remarks, is that we actually are reaching a situation where there's a tight labor market in some segments, such as businesses are complaining of the inability to find available talent with the skills that they need. So while there's absolutely no doubt that a lower unemployment rate is a good thing for the regional economy, it brings its own set of issues and concerns in terms of making sure you attract the talent either to educate or to have immigration of those with the skills that business needs. And we would certainly also want to be sure, that the rate isn't dropping because people are becoming discouraged. I think this is fairly well known, but those who simply give up looking for work are no longer counting the unemployment rate. So one of the unfortunate consequences of the Great Recession is that some workers simply fell out of the labor market entirely. So the reason we look both at the unemployment rate and also the labor force participation rate is we would like to see the participation rate get up, which means that we don't have folks sitting on the sidelines when they could be active in the economy. So there's no single answer. Again, our work on workforce is intended to keep the supply of the talent near what business requires, and our additional work, to provide folks with the skills, the education that they need, is to make sure that they're able to be out there participating and finding the job that they want. So I hope that gives some information.
It does. Just as a follow-up, the unemployment rate, though, at 5.9 is actively looking people. Those are people that are on the unemployment roll. That's not those that have given up or are no longer in the workforce, not looking.
Yes.
Is that right? And when we were at 9%, it was really more like a 12 or 13% if you add in those that have given up and couldn't find a job.
Yes. And so they're counted as long as they're looking, even if they've exhausted their benefits. So the survey that's used asks people, are you looking for work? It's not simply counting the unemployment rolls. They're actually surveying folks and asking them.
Thank you.
Okay, in regards to, I appreciate the financial guy and the numbers crunching guy saying, no, that's policies over there. So when Mr. Carter gets up here, it's always a good place to be. Stay with your numbers, let somebody else get to the policy set aspects. Getting to your numbers. You've got 16 items, I think, on this list, as I picked up. What's the priority if you had to put them in a priority basis?
Sure. Thanks, Councilman. Well, we need to look back to what we say in the plan, because the plan is intended to be the statement of what the county's priorities are. So the measures that align with the top priorities are the ones that would be the priority measures. So as we're focusing this year on our workforce, supply of talent matching demand, we certainly want to look at those measures that tell us how we're doing with the workforce. But we've also noted that we're focusing on equity and inclusion, so we also want to look at those measures that tell us who's being left behind, who's suffering in terms of their health. So it's challenging to say some are more important than others when these are supposed to reflect the metrics of the plan.
Right, and that's all I'm asking, because you're going to continue to provide us with these metrics on a regular, reoccurring basis. It just seems to me to make sense to stack them in the same priority that you believe the plan is stacked. So whatever you believe is item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, make sure that the metrics would stack up so we can look at those and track them. Obviously, if you have 16 items, something's going to be number 16 and something's going to be number 1, and it should, I believe, map exactly with your plan as it's written. It's always shocking when people write up metrics and find out that their number 1 metric is number 16 in their priority because of the way it's discussed. So I would just like to make sure you go through this, put them in that same sequence and priority so that we can be tracking them and say, okay, we did our top 5 and we nailed them. The bottom 5, maybe we weren't as good, but we always knew that we were going to focus on these top 5, whatever they happen to be. So if you could prioritize them. And you gave me the why. I believe that the 16 were picked out because they map directly over to the plan?
Well, so there's a section in the plan where we talk about what the metrics should be.
Right.
So we're simply trying to find data that matches up with each of those.
Yeah, that's on. So these 16 items, if we follow them, we'll follow some place within the plan that these are being mentioned, or a concept that will relate to that.
In general, but again, I don't need to belabor it, but there's actually a part of the plan that says these are the metrics. So it's actually page 4.
Yeah.
Page 4, so we certainly could change the plan to reorder the metrics, but this is what is in the plan now.
Yeah, I just want, when you report to these, and I would like to see these every quarterly.
Yes, sir.
With the information. Who was the selector of these metrics? It was a group, you as the financial numbers guy, or what was the selection process?
So again, in terms of what you measure, we took a look at what data is available. We consulted to some extent with our INP people. Don't want to lay it on them. We tried to do this within development. So there's really two things. One is what can we get? And number two is how well does it match up with what the plan says? Some of these areas, like employment, that's a broad category. So we currently said, let's look at people working in the private sector. There's certainly maybe value in saying who's working in all types of jobs. So one of the things we certainly, again, listening to the feedback, gauging this, the quarterly discussion with the commission is, are we measuring the right thing to say how we're doing on this metric? I mentioned, again, the opportunity index. There's others available. We can look at others to say, do they do a better job of matching up to what we're intending to do, which is say, are folks reaching that opportunity across the county?
And back to, I think, Mr. Miller's question as far as Mr. Penny, not to get to the specifics of that, but it was referencing almost like a benchmarking concept of how are we in Cuyahoga County faring. What are the benchmarks that are used in Franklin County and Hamilton County? What would their list look like versus this list?
Councilman, further research is needed.
Okay, please do that,
Make a
because
note of
it tells us if we selected 16 and our 16 aren't close to theirs, then either they're offline or we're offline, or maybe they know something we don't know, or vice versa in that respect. The right-hand column is the value as to the snapshot as to when you put this, when this information came available, 2016 or 2017. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
What's your definition of success of what that right-hand column should look like? If we're going to define success, let's just pick one out. Business starts. You have it at 1906. If we're looking at a benchmarking of other counties similarly sized, which Hamilton and Franklin are relatively, is 1906 put us in last place, first place, or within the norm?
Councilman, it's a great research question. We obviously haven't done the research, but the other thing I would say is, in terms of our goal, it might be expressed as a trend rather than a value. So some of these we may say our goal is to increase a value. We see a value in increasing business starts over where we were 2 years ago.
Okay, I'm sorry, but I don't define success as an increase. Okay. I define it as a target with something of value, because if you put 1907, you really hit that goal. But I don't think that's an achievement as far as where you're talking about.
So that's more, as you said, the benchmarking. How do we stack up?
It just seems to me that we're always in competition with somebody, and in this particular case, our competitively sized counties, if that's what we're being referenced as to why we're, again, I'm not trying to say whether he was correct or not, but as far as where we are, because that's that visual impact that people, I want to go to X county because I think it's successful. So I think there should be another column on here, whether it's a trend, whether it's whatever it is. If you're going to define it as a trend, then you've got all this, and you said all this data was relatively available to put this together. You know what I'm going to ask is, give me the trend for the last 5 years. Yes. And have that be that chart, and then define success as far as where that trend should be. So with that, that was actually what I was looking at, whether this is a monitor, currently this is a snapshot of a monitored piece of information versus a defined success as far as, again, 1906. That we don't know whether that's a good number or a bad number, because we don't have a goal with that. The first step of having a goal is to know where you are, so I think it's great.
Yes.
Don't misunderstand me. I just think the next step is, okay, where do we want these numbers all to be as we define success? Any questions in regards to any of mine or any of the other committee members? Okay. Yes.
Yeah, I guess just a real quick question. Are we doing anything special to promote programs we already have in place? For example, I'm a huge fan of our Skill Up program here at the county, yet everywhere I go in every community I talk to, most people haven't heard of it. So I see we're doing something that says we're going to create some kind of legislation. What are we doing to promote programs we already have at the county?
Thank you again, Councilman. Great question. And I'm not going to not answer the question, but to some extent, I'm going to say there are others, there are those who could talk even better about that. You know, briefings from Mr. Feinerman, you know, because they've been quite active. One statistic they shared with us, they have over 2,900 prospects at this point. When we built our customer relationship management system, it's basically a sales management system, and loaded in all the companies they had contacted. They have contacted over 2,900 companies so far. But there is always a desire to have greater awareness of the program. They do things such as working with the Greater Cleveland Partnerships, both its Smaller Enterprises Council, its Middle Market Council, the large companies. You know, we promote the program at our quarterly meetings with the 30 communities, but there's always room for more awareness, more market awareness of the program.
Okay, thank you.
Well, and I think it's a great question, because we have touted this as being a project that we want to hold out, and I think it's a great idea, great concept, so that would be really easy to put measurements on that. How many dollars and how many people have actually drawn down funds for that? And our target and objective is to go from this point to this point. Those are real bodies and real employment and real workforce that are getting the skills. So, I mean, that would be an easy one, and it is in our plan. The Skill Up is in there, so it'd be one that would be. And the nice thing about it, I think we're on the leading edge of that kind of program. So I don't think Franklin or Hamilton County are doing that. So we can set the standard. Nothing wrong with us being the benchmark for them too. Any other questions? Actually, one I missed, infant mortality and opioid deaths. I understand why we as a county want to measure those items and why it's important for us to get the infant mortality rates down and the opioid deaths down. Tell me why that is an economic driver issue in our economic success of the county.
Sure. Thank you, Councilman. These measures actually show how people are doing, and while there's not 100% link between your income and your health outcomes, there's ample research that shows when people don't have enough income, it's linked to food insecurity, linked to not having time to get proper medical care, linked to possibly living in housing which has conditions in it that may poison the children. So this type of data is an indicator of how it's a result of their economic status, whether they're able to access good jobs or not. Understand the question. The question is there a loop in which folks who are disadvantaged in this way, have family illness, death in the family? We know that, drug addiction keeps people from working. But in this case, we're using the data more to say, how is our population doing as a result of their economic opportunities?
Okay, and I understand the infant mortality can play into that, whether the mother is the pregnant mother is taking in proper care, prenatal care, and all those kind of things. The opioid, there's data that supports that if you have an opioid problem, it links back to not a driver of poor economics, but it was the other way around. The economics drove people to opioid addiction.
Councilman, I don't want to overstate this, but and there's those in the county that have studied this problem far more than I have. Our medical examiner is probably the expert in this, but there has been some suggestion that, there's some connection between other challenges people face and their susceptibility to drug addiction.
Okay,
I want to
well,
overstate that.
don't misunderstand my questions. I am deeply concerned with both subject matters and want to see both improved on behalf of the county, but I just want to make sure there was a causal connection between, when we get to the prioritizing these 16 items, does it get prioritized economically because of an economic driver, or is it is it item X, 15, 16, because it is not as big an economic driver as these other ones you're talking about? That's because we're in here to talk about how do we drive jobs, and I'm a big believer that a job is one of the biggest things that fixes a lot of these issues out there. So, any questions, comments? All right, Mr. Carter, if maybe you can come up, and there's no sense like no time like the present to answer Mr. Miller's question. And if you need to have it go back
If you
over.
just restate it.
Sure.
I will.
I know the general gist of it, but just so
I will rephrase the question as follows, Mr. Chairman, to Director, as to in your opinion, to what extent do John Penny's comments represent valid problems that we need to be concerned about, or is his data either off track or not, or not the full story?
In the consideration of the spokesman here, are you even aware that it took
Yes.
place down? Okay, all right. I want to give you take you off the hook in case you weren't even aware of that. Yeah, okay.
I didn't attend. I did see it, and I am going to meet with Mr. Penny. I think having watched his presentation, listened to leaders in the marketplace, that Mr. Penny is challenging us to do better. There are areas where we are lagging. Our unemployment rate has been higher than the U.S. average. So the point that I think that I didn't agree with his assessment is that there is more collaboration that's occurring in the marketplace than he gives credit for with some of the entities that he's named. I referenced one in my testimony, the work of the Fund for Economic Future, where we're partnered, but by no standard is anyone satisfied with the performance. So one of the reasons why I asked Mr. Hurdick to step into this role is that historically I think we've been anecdotally based. And so to create an entity that is looking at numbers, measuring numbers, defining numbers for our performance is tremendously important so that we can report out to the general public, you, and the executive. So no one, and I don't disagree with his general thrust of his comments. I don't know where he drew all his data. If you look at productivity across the region, some numbers I've looked at from Team NEO, it's increased. Employment has increased. Now we are certainly lagging with some of the entities and geographies that he compared us to. But in my assessment, there are other measures beyond job creation to look at a community's health. And those are getting better. I mean, this community was hit tremendously hard by the foreclosure crisis, and by the dislocation of the manufacturing and steel industries. So qualitatively, I think we're headed in the right direction. Quantitatively, we've got work to do, and everyone recognizes that, and we're committed to working with him and others to improve our results in terms of job creation, particularly in industries that are going to grow jobs in the future. So that's why you see a focus in this plan around innovation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What is exactly an opportunity index? That when we talk about that national figure of a C minus, what is the opportunity index?
I'm going to let Mr. Hurdick. I know a little bit about the opportunity index. It is something that national organizations use to look at a composite indice, a measure of a community's health, but different organizations use different measures. So I'm going to let Mr. Hurdick come and kind of drill into that for you.
Okay.
Thank you, Councilman. This particular opportunity index is from an organization called Opportunity Nation. They actually have a website where they promote the index and give the components. They basically look at 4 components, all of which they use data for, having to do with really they're the population welfare measures. Are people educated? Are they employed? Are they healthy? Are they well situated in their housing? These are some of the measurements they look at to say, you know, is the population benefiting from whatever the government is doing?
Okay. And is the index that they use, is it an annual thing that they do, or is it a 5-year measure? How do they do that, I guess?
This is annual. The general, for most of these community indicator measures, including this one, you generally get them annually.
Okay. Then I'll go back to Mr. Carter. So how do you plan or intend as in your position with the county to improve that C- rating? Because I look at that, and obviously there was a time when I thought C- was good, but and not anymore. Some of my older grade. But seriously, you know, how do we intend to improve that? Because if you are trying to attract people, and we are competing with other counties, other regions, and you see things like that, that's not one of those positive things that Cleveland Foundation or anybody else would be wanting to, show anybody.
No, agreed. Well, I'm going to kind of go back to Mr. Miller's question, transition to yours.
Sure.
I think another thing about Mr. Penny's assessment is one of the reasons why I want to sit down with him is kind of walk him through some of the things that we've done. So his critique was of the broader region, not specifically the county. Obviously, we are, the economic driver of the region, but I don't think he was as informed as some of the results and work that the county has done collectively. And the Opportunity Index is a collective responsibility. So I look at it as a private sector. Our office is becoming more aligned. So so historically, what we've just done in a business loan, we're trying to connect our workforce vertical to our housing community development. So the housing plan to really look at the community more holistically and integrate our programs more effectively. And so that's why the question about the health is important, right? So if you don't have, healthy community, they can't work and be productive. And so as we dig into this, again, this is a starting point, next year or even by the next hearing, we'll have a more precise answer around how we're going to move that C- to a B+.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I guess what's concerning to me is that when I think of economic development and the job that we hope that you are performing and those in your department, is that your number one priority is to encourage business to locate and expand in Cuyahoga County. That, to me, seems to be the most important for that department to focus on. When we look at other variables that it looks like we are looking at now in your perhaps new direction, is that we have agencies that are already doing what you're proposing. As a member of the Health and Human Services, lots of different participation in trying to help those that need that help and know where the funding is. And we have workforce training with our community colleges are already in place and doing those things. We have housing agencies out there that are in place and helping those that need it, demolition funds, food assistance. We have many of the things that it looks like you are going to incorporate into the economic development piece. So I guess I don't know whether we're going to be duplicative in our efforts in incorporating that into the economic development mission, or can those that are already in place, if they're not doing the job and we think we have to get involved and shore up what they're doing in order to get this county healthier than it is, I guess I don't want to see a distraction from the primary goal, in my opinion, is to encourage business to locate and expand in Cuyahoga County. And everything else that perhaps is a detriment, like not a good workforce, education should be better, housing, food assistance, workforce training, those are all kind of the subtypes of conditions that are there that perhaps could be preventing us from being able to encourage business to be here. But there are other pieces in the county that are already addressing that. So I guess I don't want to see our primary mission to encourage business to come here, either to expand or locate, be sidestepped by trying to get involved in things that other organizations or agencies are already doing. So are you concerned at all about that we are taking on too much as an economic development department, and we may get away from the core of what we've been doing in trying to encourage businesses to locate here or expand?
I'm not sure I understand your question. I understand the general thrust of your question, but if you could give me a specific example that comes to mind for you that creates concern, and then I think I can answer your question, Councilman.
Well, we have, I mean, you know, in my time here at the county, we have a lot of either inside the county or outside private organizations working on trying to improve this county. Mm-hmm. And whether it's housing, better housing, whether it's loans for housing, whether it's workforce training through our many different ways of doing that. There's food assistance. There's many, many different layers right now that exist to try and help our community do better. Mm-hmm. And I'm just saying, it sounds like in your direction here, we are incorporating many of those things now too. When you talk about in your metrics, career paths, underserved residents, workforce training, even in, it just seems that we are taking on more to make our county healthier, which is good. Mm-hmm. But aren't there others out there that are already doing that?
Yes, I think I understand your question, Councilwoman. If I don't, please, I'm happy to discuss this offline as well, because I think it's an important question. The plan and the associated metrics, and as I said in my testimony, is really a framework for the county economic development system. I have a personal motto that I've kind of developed over my career, that economic development is everybody's business. So it's not just, you know, the economic development function, of which that's one component of our office, but there's also housing, community development, and workforce, which in the economic development profession is really kind of the leading edge of economic development. Now, it's less kind of project-oriented, it's more systems-oriented around better connecting the supply of talent to business. Mm-hmm. But public safety, community health, all of those things are important to businesses. And so while we're not directly responsible, you know, we work and facilitate and measure that so that we communicate to businesses when they come to Cuyahoga County and say, here are the great things that are happening here comprehensively. Neighborhood quality is one of them, and so you all have expanded the definition of community development, moving from the casino, broadening that, which we applaud. And so I don't think that you should look at this plan as responsibility. We've tried to define what the direct responsibility of this office, and that's number one, the business creation and growth. These other things are tangential to that and are the responsibility of others. And so our job is to partner with this. So I said up front, there's no way we can do all. I said this, I think even the last 2 times I've been here, this is a partnership framework for that the county has a unique role to lead in because of our Health and Human Services portfolio. You know, we are not, you know, we kind of fly above the battlefield. So 59 communities are, in a sense, competing. Our job is to look and create integration and coordination between and among communities. And so I think the county has a unique role given our platform to influence, and our office does, without having the sole responsibility for a lot of these metrics. So this is more a measure of health. The ones that, so I think to Mr. Schron's point, we can rack and stack these, if you will, when we come back to talk about which ones that you can hold us directly accountable for. Mm-hmm. I those
guess
are more the business oriented, but
right.
I hope I answered your question. I don't fully understand your question with specifics.
Well, it's just that there's a lot of resources out there right now, a lot that we offer as a county, and I'm just seeing those same things now being part of the economic development where it wasn't before. I mean, we didn't talk about housing as part of, I mean, housing has always been a priority of the county, but not in economic development. Or, I mean, it may have been part of it, but it wasn't the focus, if you were to say, what's the focus of economic development? It's to bring jobs to Cuyahoga County and business expansion. That's what you would say. You wouldn't say, well, it's to improve our neighborhoods and our housing. That's being done by another entity in Cuyahoga County in our own government system. And I guess I just wanted to know how much time will be spent on those type of outlines that you gave us here that may take you away from encouraging business to locate here and expand.
Okay, that's a fair question. Again, we are structured around workforce, which is directly a key driver of business creation and growth, economic development, so you're familiar with that, and the business lending that we do. You know, my personal opinion, not only because of the current and existing structure of the office that preceded me, we've only added workforce, housing, community development, and it's intrinsic to that. And particularly as we look at, you know, that is outlined in this plan that was endorsed by the commission, a focus on equity and inclusion. So one of the things that anyone looking at our county would say, our poverty rate is too high. So now that we are in this, you know, near full employment, how do we create conduits from those neighborhoods that have high unemployment, that are certainly higher than the county average, and connect them to jobs, both existing manufacturing-based jobs and also what you alluded to, kind of the pathway from pre-K to college. How do we create those pathways to? So that is something that my personal opinion is that it's all relevant, but we are not diluting our focus off of job creation, which I spend a majority of my time personally with the economic development. But again, we have other terrific leaders that are advancing that and that are working in partnership with. So Ken Surratt works with a housing consortium. Right. So a lot of the, and so his job is to facilitate and create a strategic approach without being in the day-to-day. So I think the county's role is unique in that regard versus individual communities. So we want some of the parts to be greater than the whole, if that makes sense. And a lot of these partners you mentioned we don't fund, right? They come from other county sources, but we are trying to do is integrate and connect them as appropriate. Did I answer your question, or is this something where we need to sit and kind of?
Yeah, I'll have to give it more thought. It's the first time I've read, you know, your testimony, and it does look like we're going in a little different direction than we had before. I mean, you're saying that we are. And how does that impact the goal of encouraging businesses to locate and expand here? And how many other agencies that are here in Cuyahoga County are already doing that you should be aware of and be a part of, but not really be your responsibility? I guess that's, okay. But I'll have to give it more thought.
Okay, no, I look forward to having a deeper conversation because it's an important point that you raised. And I think, again, the thing to consider about this plan, if you look at who's on it, it's not the plan specifically for this office. It's the plan for our economic development ecosystem that we are kind of facilitating and coordinating. And so with the exception of our direct lending programs and now Skill Up, there's very few things that we're doing in our housing community development investments at the resident level that we're doing directly. You know, even our partnership with Greater Cleveland Partnership, you know, they identify the businesses, so we're very leveraged on opportunities, and we underwrite those opportunities and in a lot of cases provide capital to execute the deal. So, you know, we're trying to rationalize, you know, what people do best. And so that's even getting better through a recent additional investment that's made into this community by the state to do more business outreach. Are you familiar with that? Should I talk about that for a second?
Go ahead.
Okay. So Jobs Ohio has made an investment of 12 FTEs to this marketplace, not just Cuyahoga County, but the trade area for Greater Cleveland Partnership. And so we are meeting monthly now with my office, the City of Cleveland, GCP, and Team NEO to figure out how to best deploy those 12 FTEs. What will be the measurements, the targeting, but you know, by the fall, those FTEs will be aligned in an active calling program to businesses in the county with the first goal of, Juergens, Mr. Strong, what do you need to make your business grow? As an example. And so, there's always been this desire by the executive and myself for this office to be more proactive and engaged, which is one of the reasons why we put forward this business ombudsman in the last budget cycle. And so these will be resources that will link in with our Skill Up Call program, so the work that Mr. Feineman and his team are doing, the outreach. So that gets to, again, so that's not 12 FTEs to the county.
Right.
That's 12 FTEs from another entity that said, Cuyahoga County, this region is important. And so by this time next year, we should begin to see the fruits of that collective effort, as an example.
Those 12 FTEs, those are for our region only?
Yes, and a number of
Team
them
Neo
are
region?
focused on the Team Jobs Ohio Team Neo region, yes, are focused on Cuyahoga County. I don't know the exact number. I can get those to you by the next.
Okay.
But they're already hired, staffed up. We've met some of them. And so I'm excited, one, that the state declared this region as a priority for growth, so maybe indirectly saying, hey, you are a little, so we're going to add some more resources. We want you to be proactive in engagement. You align them as you see fit. The county's a part of that discussion and deployment. And so,
Okay, good. It's all good to know. Yeah, I was familiar, but that's good to hear it.
Mr. Tuma?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank Councilwoman for her insightful questions. Along the same line there, I think one of the things that Council has to look at is doing that balancing act between being, fiscally responsible with the programs we support and trying to assess, aspirational goals versus pragmatic objectives that can actually be implemented where we have an actual economic impact that can be, verified. So I certainly appreciate, a 5-year plan and doing some new outside the box thinking. That's always important. But again, along the lines of what the Councilwoman is saying is, I think it's important to, focus and narrow on some definable objectives that will have practical and long-lasting impact on Cuyahoga County as we move forward. And it's not to say that we shouldn't have aspirations. We should actually shoot very high. But you also have to look at the financial resources and duplication of services and things like that, and look at those type of things as we move forward too. So I just want to make you aware that Council, this body, is looking at that, and that's why when we have these questions of, the program with respect to the loans to the businesses as to whether or not there's a, economic impact on the community, the things that are needed to move forward with that. Those are the questions. The reason we ask those questions, again, looking at what is that economic impact going to be on the community. So.
So, Mr. Chairman, so just if I can replay what I'm hearing is when we come back and discuss this at the next hearing, is to be more precise in defining what components of this plan the county is taking on and what components are someone else's responsibility that we either are facilitating or cheerleading or supporting, and whether, and then maybe even break that out even further, correlate it with direct financial, investment out of our budget. Is that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think that would be something that would be helpful, something that's definable, quantifiable, moving forward, and then along with the council chairman, request to maybe enumerate what is priority in the listing of these updates, because again, there's a lot there, and again, some of it, very good and aspirational, and we should certainly try to do what we can, and if it can be done, and it's pragmatic and financially prudent to do, then certainly by all means this council will look at it and make a determination as to whether to support something like that. So I don't want to say don't try or don't shoot for the stars, obviously.
The only, let me just try to address part of your question and concern. The only two things in this plan that I indicated that we would be coming for, or in my testimony for future support, was the workforce, which you'll hear more about when that legislation is introduced, and then potentially a resource around mobility. And that supports this broader framework that we're not leading the Fund for Economic Future and other partners are leading this mobility analysis of the job hubs analysis that you've heard about, where we have jobs in certain places and labor supply and others, and getting people to jobs is becoming challenging. So those are the only two components of this plan where there's even an inkling of additional financial support. Now we may come back and say, we need more capital for loan.
Right, and
that's
that's the part that I'm
okay. That's a separate discussion.
Right, and just I haven't been here long, but I know that there's always new additional things that come up. Right. So I just want to keep that in mind as we move forward. Okay.
But does that make sense? For what the only two things that are?
Yeah, no, I do. I appreciate that. I do. I appreciate that, and I hope you understand where I'm coming from this body's point of view.
So the Workforce Innovation and Workforce Funders Group, again, that is a collaboration of external partners that the county exec and our office facilitated. We are co-investing and leveraging funding from other partners in the philanthropic community primarily. So there will be a request as part of that. And again, as we refine over the next several months this mobility question, there may be a request there of an FT. But other than that, I have not requested in my testimony any new resources. Okay. Again, because this is a community, and so a community framework that the commission has endorsed. Okay. Most of our community partners have seen, and again, the county's role is to facilitate and use our platform to help people collaborate and shepherd people in the right direction.
Right. Okay. Understood.
Okay. If I may, Chair, to follow up on that.
We're over Mr. Hauser. He was next. We'll come back to Mr. Miller.
Just very quickly, and to your credit, Director Carter, I know you've been meeting with a lot of community leaders and different city leaders. I guess I just want to, stress that as far as any economic development loan, we just be more purposeful and we make sure we, diversify our portfolio. We purposely, and it sounds like you guys are taking the steps with Jobs Ohio and the President's Council, but even in your testimony, I'm looking at the three loans examples you gave, Church and State, Variety Theater, and Link 29. They're on West 25th, West Park, and Midtown. 2 of the 3 projects are Geist development projects. And so just want to make sure that as a county as a whole, we make sure we tell everyone about these resources, and we also look to diversify outside of just downtown.
That's a fair point.
Next up, and then
yes. I hear you loud and clear, Councilman.
Mm-hmm. Director, just a couple of comments. First, I'd like to thank you for including comments about the Aerozone Alliance in your opening presentation. That's an area of activity that's very near and dear to my heart, so I appreciate that. Second thing is that there's an aspect that I've brought up before and I'm going to bring up again, which is that there's something that I don't see in this plan that I'd like to see, which is what are the 5 to 10 things that were the most important and that you were trying to do in the last year, and how many of them did you accomplish? And the same thing going forward for the upcoming year, which is the first year of the 5-year plan. What are the 5 to 10 things that you would most want to accomplish, and how would you know whether or not you accomplished them?
Okay. I think that if you address the priorities by your points, those should come out in the same sequence. I would hope that if they give you your first 5 priorities, those should be the first 5. I would hope that would get to the same place, Mr. Miller. If they tell you that items,
hopefully so, along with something on the metrics as to how you would measure,
exactly.
how you would measure those specific priorities.
Which was exactly what I asked to put another column on, put them in sequence,
and again,
put them in the priority.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I think, and I had this same issue when I first arrived here. I think we're conflating the performance of my office with the partners. But what I'm happy to do, and we will send for the next consideration of this plan, because you did ask for this last year. We have done a report card for the 5-year plan, which is this document, which we will send for your consideration and review by the next meeting, something we've shared with the commission members. And so they had a similar concern, how are we measuring progress? So out of the 32 activities on this plan, the majority of them we're making progress toward. None of them are 100% complete. There's some that are 70 to 80%, but over the 5 years, each year we should be making more progress. And I appreciate, we didn't put the Aerozone Alliance in here specifically to curry favor with you, but that is an example of innovation and collaboration in one example, and how we are positioning this community through partnership to compete for industries of the future around aerospace and drawing the economic power of NASA Glenn into the broader community. And so, Mr. Hauser will be happy to come see you on something where we are in discussion with NASA around how we infuse what they do with the community at large, but I'd love to come talk to you about that offline. And so that Aerozone and those 7 communities, the OAI, your leadership, and others really reflects positioning for the future. And again, it's not the county doing that specifically. We're not leading that. OAI is the designee. We are investing in that. We're leveraging their technical expertise and partnership with NASA to create a tech transfer model through their procurement system to the benefit of our community. And so the model there is we want Aerozone Alliance to look like, Mr. Schron, you'll know the example, Huntsville. And so they have billions of dollars that they're spending, and so the administrator there and the executive are going to go see the administrator, wants to take some of that outside of the gates and infuse it into the community. And so it's going inbound, but it's not coming outbound at the rate we would all want. So we need to form a measure around that, which Mr. Hurdick and I will work on. But Mr. Miller, that is why we use that as an illustration. And so if it had the benefit of pleasing you, then so that's added. But that is an important example for this committee and for our community. Mr. Hauser, just to link this, so our first, to your point with NASA, is okay, so if we are telling this community that we need to position communities that have been on the sidelines for these jobs of the future, how do we use a resource like NASA to do that? So that's the kind of discussion we've been having with their leadership and leadership from Washington, D.C. But so we will, forward this so you'll have a chance to review it and challenge us on our self-assessment, but there are specifics for each. And Paul, we should also send the 1-year component of this. So there's a 5-year component which lays out everything that the commission has endorsed, you approved in previous plans. Each activity, you'll recall, was voted on by this committee and the council last year. And then there's a progress assessment with a percentage and a specific example of what reflects that progress. And then we will get you, for my office, the accomplishments and the year forward. Does that make sense, Mr. Miller?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Just to bring, to wrap that up so we have a nice tight bow around that. This sheet gave us the metrics that you are saying that go parallel with the plan and the 16 items, and I asked them to be prioritized. And Mr. Miller asked basically the same thing in a different format. Make sure the priority are just so we don't get into this is not our responsibility, this is somebody else's responsibility, but it's part of our aspirational for the county. I want them in priority based on what you actually impact and can touch.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, that's, Mr. Miller, is that what you were also asking? I mean, if you can't touch something that's significantly on this list, but it's really aspirational in your 5-year plan, that's fine. But I want to know, what are your top priorities that are items that you actually touch and impact that we can actually go back and measure how far we've gone? Because you're now 2 years here at the job, and so guess what? We can actually start to measure 2 years worth of performance and go forward. So that's what I'm asking. Is that in concert with what you're talking about, Mr. Melton? Some of these items on the 16, I understand that maybe you don't actually touch, but they're a high priority because you think it's in the best interest of the county. I want the priority to based on things you can touch so we can come back and say, you're hitting it, you're not hitting it, things of that nature in there. And perhaps Mr. Miller has been actively involved with charter review and other people. I'll just plant the seed and let you come back and let us know. Is a 5-year plan, does a 5-year plan, it's in the charter, it's mandatory, does it make sense? Should it be a 2-year? Should it be a 3-year? Because most major businesses have gotten away from 5-year plans because they get so, they can't stay fresh for 5 years, they get stale. And as a result, you are more reactionary in responding to changes if you go to a 2 or 3-year plan. So perhaps it's time to go back and look and say, because we go through this exercise every year, and if something is 5 years old, I can guarantee you that we can go back and look at the 5-year plan from year one. It probably doesn't look a thing like where we are right today. And perhaps that would be a charter review item to go to a 2-year or 3-year to keep it more fresh and spontaneous. Because a good friend of mine told me one thing, make sure you always keep the number one thing the number one thing. And as was suggested, the number one thing I believe for your department is job creation. And that means that the business has to be there to do it, but jobs are the number one thing out there. And I think
that gets to some broader issues that Ms. Baker raised, and so that is really a philosophical question that requires discussion with the county exec. So I see your thrust, but we have the structure of our office. Again, this was we created a draft. The commission reviewed it, discussed it, so it's not just the Office of Development's plan. It's something that those 9 members, including Mr. Schron, discussed, deliberated, put forward, what we were the authors of. I believe in what's written here. I think it's something that distinguishes this county. It is aspirational in some instances, but we want to be the best county in the state, and so that's what we're working toward. And I think this reflects that intent through partnership. And so that, if I had to leave with nothing else in this hearing, is the partners that are listed here, and you'll see in this report that we've got our partners, who's responsible for it, right? Yeah. And so we'll break out, we have county government here in one column, so we'll break that out again for the Department of Development. Okay. And we've made progress here. And so I think one of the things that more so the people who interviewed me from the private sector said part of your challenge for the executive and you is to find the role of county government in the economic development space. We think it's important and relevant, but it's ambiguous, or has been ambiguous. Define it. And I think that this has helped do that, but it's open for discussion, so I appreciate the feedback.
Yeah. You ever start to say, gee whiz, where am I going? Where's my roadmap? Go back and read the charter. They did a good job in the preamble at laying this out, and that 3 of the top 6 items in the preamble are specifically about jobs and job creation. And so I think that when all else fails, go back to the founding document, and they did a good job in that respect. Yes.
If I just may also on the Councilman Tuma in asking that if there is going to be increased funding, we would like to know what that is. But on top of that, that isn't increased funding, but increased human capital. How much human capital will we be expending on perhaps a little bit different direction in our partnerships that would perhaps take us away from what we were doing traditionally in bringing these businesses to Cuyahoga County? If there is a cost there, you only have so many people in your department. They right now have specific tasks. Those tasks might be evolving into more of a broader partnership. I'm not quite sure, but how much time would be spent away from perhaps what you were doing before, and maybe that's what we should be doing, but there is still a cost beyond money that we may be finding when we talk to you again. Well, we don't have as many perhaps business opportunities coming to Cuyahoga County because we spend a great deal of time in this area that may be bringing a good qualified workforce, but it doesn't get our number any higher as far as the number of jobs coming here. Mm-hmm. Just that cost that's involved in not just loans and grants and things that you'd be asking for to expand your department, but also what did it cost us to change direction a bit that you're asking for?
And I hate to bring Mr. Penny back up, but I am. Well, one of the things that he really underscored is the need for a coordinated system. And so we've done that in the workforce arena. And so I do want Mr. Feinerman to come up and just speak to Mr. Hauser's question with your permission before we end, Mr. Chairman. we are now doing
Before you
that.
get him up,
know
we'd
you
welcome
just
him up here,
jumped
but
up.
I have a couple more for you just before we get to there.
The second component is we need to do that in the, we are doing this now with this new investment. We're asking ourselves that same question in the economic development sphere. I think we have done it very effectively in the community development and housing, and there's continued work there now that the housing plan is done. And so our office does not have the resources. We are an enabling entity, not a enabling and doing entity. And so the capital that we provide, there's no way we could hit the jobs target that work. But these communities will tell you, and many of these projects we've done in your districts, we are the bank of last resort for the communities in our county, and we are the last mile to get the. And so I think we've had a pretty good track record of doing that. And so I'm not going to go through the examples, but you know them as well as I do. But this is a good question to ask when we talk about a strategy, and so it's a great time to do that.
Well, and I'm thrilled to see that on your list of updates that you gave us, that you're going to be measuring your IT change of jobs. You're going to be measuring your manufacturing change of jobs. You're going to be measuring your travel and employment and workforce development measure of jobs. So those would be subsets of what specifically you've already targeted. But to as we talked about, I think Mr. Tuma raised the issue in regards to that, is the deflection away, and Ms. Baker raised it also. For example, you've got engaged in actually changing the transportation plan. And is that really, I know that's a problem, and I know that's a problem that affects the job, but is that really the function of economic development, or is that somebody else's job? If you don't have the transportation, you can't get the job to improve it, but is that the job of, for example, another area within government to fix that problem? Because every dollar that gets diverted is a dollar that out of your department is a dollar that you're not spending on that number one thing being the number one thing.
Yeah. Well, the transportation, I think, is an issue. We've asked the fund to give us more data around how employers. So you heard the executive heard about workforce before he took office. Now I'm trying to get an assessment of how pervasive this mobility issue is. So the fund is working on that, and it may be something, particularly as we look at the third priority and the emphasis on equity and inclusion, moving for people. And so they have data that shows the cost of getting to a job and how we are at parity with New York City, which is stunning. And so tighter labor market, we have skilled people in some of these neighborhoods. How do we move them if our transit system is inefficient? If it takes 2 or 3 hours to get from their home to a job. So if we can't help create a labor supply, not only through skilled labor, but also available labor through transportation assets and resources that should be equitable to everyone, I would argue that that is a reasonable application of time. But for another discussion, and it's something that,
it just seems like there's other people focusing on that. As I think that was the question that really came up. Yes, it needs to be addressed. Yes, it needs to be fixed. If the job is in Solon, which is what I always hear the folks from the Fund for Economic Future saying, that job should get moved from Solon to here or improve the transportation. Is that your function out there with only X amount of hours to do it? Ms. Simon, looks like you have
Yeah, I just think they're integral to each other. I mean, I understand. I don't know who else would be working necessarily in conjunction with us to have that opportunity to get transportation. If we have job openings that aren't filled, that's part of the mission, is to fill those jobs. So I don't know who else would be doing it necessarily.
Well, I would hope like
I don't know, it's just a
RTA
different
and people like that, perhaps.
now that the executive is chairman of NOACA, he is now immersed in this. And so I'm not going to belabor it, but I got the collective feedback. So.
It's more a structural issue. The housing's, I know that we need housing addressed. Should it be there, and should dollars of, community development, that's part of the department. It's just a question of, how to allocate resources. But both are important to stabilize the region and the county so that people want to move here.
Yeah.
Jobs,
I don't disagree that it needs to be addressed.
It does.
I just...
I don't think you can have one without the other.
I would agree with that. But is this the department that needs to fix transportation out there? So it's
for housing.
Yeah, or housing, right. Is this the department to fix either one of them?
So we don't
We have a
any
housing department.
responsibility for any of it, not to just labor, whatever you said. We support and facilitate and contribute to that. So there's other people who are the lead here. But a lot of these organizations are regional. They're not county focused. And so, you know, even in the business development world, you know, GCP and these other organizations are, you know, have multiple counties. You know, we're focused on Cuyahoga. And so, you know, I have to remind them, and so that's why we insert ourselves to make sure, and we have done that around branding opportunities when they're cultivating. So we've gotten our fair share. We want to do better, but our responsibility is the county as part of the region, but not to the expense of the region to the expense of the county is how I would frame it. But that's a resource question, but I get the thrust, Mr. Chairman.
Well, obviously, you've heard a lot of input, I think. The sad thing is that on some of those, there aren't right or wrong answers, but once you decide what is your priority list, we'll at least be able to all understand clearly what it is. If fixing the transportation moves up to number one, then I'll hold you just as accountable to fixing that as I would one of the other items.
Mr. Chairman, with your permission, what I'm going to do is bifurcate. We're going to give you the list of priorities for my office, and then I'd be hesitant to change it without getting the commission's input. So maybe at the next meeting, we can make this a discussion point
Sure.
to see what their point of view would be, and then we can, well, that might be outside. No, we're still within your 60 days.
Remember, what Mr. Miller and I were looking for is those items you can touch that you think you own, give us those priorities.
Okay, that's fair.
Yes, and sorry, but we had another input on workforce, I think.
I just wanted Mr. Feinerman to kind of talk about how he's marketing Skill Up across the county. But one of the things before he comes up, we do have the intent, Mr. Hauser, to make sure that this has more connectivity to the CDCs in the community. So we are leveraging this through other external entities, as Mr. Hurdick talked about. And so, but he's in it day to day, so let me let him.
I think it's a great program. I only wish that, as a public official, I wish I could take advantage of it. But I've decided that it's probably best not to do that.
Mr. Chairman, council members, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. Talking about specifically how we're advertising and marketing. So we, as Director Carter, have talked about, we are partnering with a variety of organizations. Directly, we are reaching out to businesses. And Mr. Hurdick talked about, we've reached out to nearly 3,000 businesses just last year. Additionally, there are many organizations, as we've discussed, out in the marketplace who are also speaking to businesses, and we have created strategic partnerships with as many as we could possibly connect with in order to align the services we deliver, which are very unique, and the services they deliver, which are also unique, and together that makes a very complementary approach. So I'll talk about one example. Our local community college, Cuyahoga Community College, and Corporate College East specifically, calls many businesses out in the marketplace to sell their programs, and there's a fee for that service to those businesses. And the challenge those businesses have is, thank you, sounds like a great program. How does your training program relate to my business? So for example, a lean manufacturing process can help businesses to eliminate waste, to ensure better quality. And the question is, how do you train a worker using the curriculum that Tri-C delivers to deliver the specific lean process that that business wants? We create the training plan that connects the business's project and waste issue with Tri-C's curriculum sequence to the set national standard for either Lean Six Sigma, Kaizen, or whichever the business is looking to train. That is the unique value that we provide, and so Tri-C regularly refers businesses to us that are interested in using their services. Same thing for other training providers out in the marketplace. There's an interesting business, they're a bus operator, and we contacted them directly 6 months ago, and they said, sounds great, we're not interested in training workers. We're not interested in investing time or money to train workers. We think we can find commercial drivers who have a passenger endorsement out in the marketplace. And we said, great, good luck. And they went out and they reached out to all of the different commercial drivers license training providers to find individuals. And one of the training providers said, the individuals who are going through our school are already earmarked for a business. Perhaps you should train your own, contact SkillUp. They'll help you create a plan to train workers, and we can deliver the services. So we have great partnerships, and we're reaching out to people directly.
Thank you so much. I'm sure you guys are, and I think as a county as a whole, and I don't think we're going to be able to fix an economic development, but I think as a county as a whole, and this is not, I guess, for you, and I should probably talk to our communication team. I think as a whole, we need to do a better job of promoting what exactly we do and all the programs and resources we have. But thank you for that clarification. And I know your Tri-C partnership, and even maybe if you could provide me a list of the other businesses we're working with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, one of the comments I generally make in a group is that no matter whether your church, your synagogue, your school, the number one item that'll always show up on the list as your number one activity you need to do is better communication. So I don't care what it is. It's always, it will be a universal term that will show up. Getting back to our metrics, you've been at this now for just short of 2 years, I think, or?
It's a year and a quarter.
Okay, year and a quarter, okay, right. So a year and a quarter. How many people specifically, not the 3,000 contacts, because only success is by a butt in the seat, as we used to define as education. How many people have actually gone through the Skill Up program and money has transferred? Because you actually pay the money to the business, I understand, or reimburse them. How many people?
So I'm gonna split up that question into both parts. You
Okay.
asked about the metrics and you asked about the money.
Right.
So I'm gonna, for metrics, direct your attention to our county overview, the 2017 overview. And there's a whole section on Skill Up specifically with the metrics. So in 2017, we reached out to and provided expert advice to 126 businesses, created 102 plans to train workers, and they requested support for 66 workers to be trained.
Okay, so 66 workers in the last year and a quarter.
2017.
Then what's our target for this year?
So there are many more individuals who are being requested for training. The companies are less interested in being reimbursed. So more workers being trained to a set of national standards, less money being requested for reimbursement for an out-of-pocket cost.
And that actually reminds me that on our educational attainment, we don't have certificates on there. And skilled certificates for welders and things of that nature are every bit as important as associate degrees in most cases now. And Tri-C will tell you that that's their fastest growing area, our skilled certificates out there. Oh, we got somebody locked? No. Oh. Well, anyway, I appreciate that. It would just, to me, so you're now saying that the money of Skills Up is not is going to be as relevant in the future?
No, what I'm saying is that employers more highly value the thousands of dollars of technical assistance we provide in kind than a reimbursement of, let's say, $1,000 or $2,000 or however much dollars.
Well, then give us the head count of people you've touched right now, whether or not you paid them dollars or didn't pay them dollars, that the employers would say, these 100 employees benefited. Now we have a benchmark, and we can say next year it's 250 or whatever.
Sure, I can get
Does that make sense?
I understand what you're asking
Yeah,
for, yes.
I'm just looking for metrics that we can put into a chart that will map up with this. Thank you.
Thank you.
And then that'll get back to Mr. Hauser's question, because that'll tell you if your effective communications are improving.
Sure. Thank you.
Because the best salesperson is a word of mouth, as we all know. Thanks. Other questions, comments? Thanks. Is there anything else for the committee? And we're going to come back in 2 weeks with updates, I hope, on the things we asked for today.
Yes.
Thank you. And we will hit the deadline for sure to make sure this gets voted out by council on a timely manner.
And then the other thing, Mr. Chairman, I am anxious to come back and have our team brief on the loans. And so we've got a presentation ready to go. And so if we could just...
You want to do that in 2 weeks too? Can you do both?
Let me check with my team, just make sure they're comfortable. I think we'll be good to go.
If you can't do it in 2 weeks, then we'll
we need
push
to
this,
have-
we'll push the whole thing back, because we just have to make sure we hit our July 24th date. So
Maybe
we
right
got,
after the 4th may work.
whatever you can get, when you walk in here, you will have the loans fully laid out with the updates, whatever date that is. You pick the date.
Okay,
All right?
perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, committee members.
Oh, sorry about that. Adjourn the meeting.